Arno. There's a shoe schoolboy in Hamanfu who works as a private businessman in Incurred. It is the 12th month and Zhu Sheng is home from winter break when he meets an old man on the way. The old man looked at him and said, Mr. Zhu doesn't teach in Incurred anymore. Where will he teach next year? Mr. Zhu replied, still teaching. The old man said, my name is Shi Jingyi, and I have a nephew who wants to find a good teacher. He just asked me to go to Dongtuan village to ask Mr. Lu Zillion, but he has already accepted the bribe from Jimin Street. Sir, if you come to my house, you'll be paid twice as much as the village. Zhu Sheng resigned and said that he had an agreement with Incurred and should keep his credit. The old man said, it's gentlemanly to keep your word, but it's still early for school to start next year. I'll give you gold 1 or 2 as an offer, and then I'll teach you for a few days. We'll talk about it in the next year. How about that? Mr. Zhu said yes. The old man stepped down and handed him the bride price, saying, my house is not far away. The house is small and unbuilt, and I can't feed livestock. Can you send the servants and horses back? It's good to walk. Mr. Zhu agreed to leave his luggage on the old man's horse. It was 3 or 4 miles before the sun went down to the old man's house. With rows of bulging spikes and doorings adorned with beast heads, Mr. Zhu's main gate was clearly an identifiable home. The old man called out his nephew to see Mr. Zhu. He was 13 or 14 years old. The old man said, my brother-in-law, Zhang Nanchuan, was an envoy when he was alive, and he left this child. Not stupid, but cosseted. If you teach him for a month, you'll be better than 10 years. In a few moments, a hearty dinner was served, but the drinks were served by women. A maid waits with a kettle. She is about 15 or 16 years old and has a beautiful look. After the banquet, the old man ordered Zhu to prepare a bed rest before quitting. When it's not sunny, teenagers come to study. Soon after Zhu Sheng got up, his maid came with a towel in her face. The maid was the one who picked up the pot last night. 3 meals a day, she's all there for. At night, she comes to clean the bed again. Zhu asked, why don't we have a houseboy? The maid smiled and left with the quilt. The next night, Zhu tries her again with a flirtatious expression. She still laughs and refuses, and Zhu sleeps with her. The maid told Zhu, there are no men in my family. Everything depends on Uncle Shi. My name is Anu. Madam respects you. She sent me because she doesn't want to work. We're going to keep this a secret today so no one will notice. We're both ashamed. One night, the two overslept and the boy came to class and met. Zhu was embarrassed and upset. At night, Anu says, thank God Madam values you, or it'll break. The man went in to tell us about us, and the wife covered his mouth, as if you were afraid to hear him, only to warn me not to stay in your study too long. When you're done, go. Zhu Sheng is very grateful, ma'am. But her son refused to study, criticized him, and his mother used to talk about it. She began sending maids, slowly appearing in person, talking to the teacher through a window, saying things, and even breaking down in tears. Every night, you have to ask her how her son learned during the day. You are lazy again and ask me to teach you well. I can't be the teacher, Mr. Zhu said. Irate, I quit. Madam sent her maid to confess, but Seo JJ gave up. Mr. Zhu has always thought of looking outside to take a break from the scenery since he became a gentleman, and his wife keeps him at home. One day, Zhu Sheng drank alcohol, got a little drunk, and was not happy, and called his maid to ask why. I didn't mean to, but I was afraid I would delay my son's education, she said. Sir, if you really want to go for a walk. No, Zhu listened and was angry. How much gold should I hold my breath? Where am I going at night? I've been ashamed of myself for days, and the offer is still in my bag. So I took out the gold and put it on the table and packed my bags immediately. Madam came out without saying a word, choking her face with her sleeves. The maid returned the gold to Zhu Sheng, opened the lock, and sent him away with an open door. Mr. Zhu went out feeling the door narrow, and after a few steps and a few sunshine, he found himself emerging from a collapsing earthen temple. Look round, it's desolate. It's an ancient tomb, terrified and grateful for the kindness of his wife. Zhu used the gold she had given to hire someone to plant earth and plant trees around him before going home. A year later, Mr. Zhu passed by, saluting to the grave, and then on his way. The old man, surnamed Shi, smiled and greeted Mr. Zhu, inviting him kindly to visit. Zhu Shengshen knew that he was a ghost, but was eager to ask his wife about the recent situation. So they went into the village and bought drinks together in the tavern. Before they knew it, it was late. The old man got up and spilled the money and said, "My house is not far from here. My sister just happened to come back to visit my mother's house. I hope that Mr. Wang will come and exorcise the old man." A few steps out of the village, another courtyard. Knocking on the door, lighting candles, and sitting with guests. After a while, the elderly man's sister, Madame Chang, came out of the room and Zhu saw her for the first time. She was carefully explained and turned out to be a beautiful woman in her 40s or so. Madame Chang thanked Zhu Shili, saying, "I'm such a lost family. The portal is snubbed. Sir, how can you give up to a dead person in return? Come on, let's go." Tears. In a moment, Madame Chang cried, "Anu, this maid is my favorite," and giving her to Mr. Zhu will also comfort you in your loneliness on the road. She can understand what you mean. Mr. Zhu said yes. In a few moments, the elder brothers and sisters are gone, and Anu leaves the waiter to sleep. The old man came to urge him to get up and see him off. Madame Chang also came out, instructed Anu to serve Mr. Zhu well in the future, and said to Zhu, "From now on, you should keep a secret carefully. Our relationship is strange and mysterious. It's not good to be afraid that the good people will make rumors." Mr. Zhu promised to say goodbye. I rode with Anu and went to the library where I taught and asked for a room to live with Anu. By chance, Anu wouldn't shy away, and no one would see her. If Zhu Shengro wanted anything, she brought it. She's good at witchcraft. She's a little sick. She'll be fine as soon as she gets a massage. At the tomb sweeping festival, Zhu Sheng returns to the tomb and Anu quits. Zhu asked her to greet her wife on her behalf, and Anu said, "Yes," and then it disappeared. A few days later, Zhu Sheng came back to find her. Just wanted to observe the grave, and Anu was suddenly sitting under a tree in a gorgeous dress, so he went on the road with her. You get used to coming and going all the time. Mr. Zhu plans to take her home with him, and she strongly disagrees. At the end of the year, Zhu quit the library and returned to his hometown to set up a date with Anu. "This is my grave," Anu said, gesturing at a pile of rocks as he dropped him to the tree where he had sat. "I was with my wife before she married me, and I was buried here after I died. Sir, if you pass by here again and burn a stick of incense, we'll meet." Zhu said goodbye to Anu and returned home. He missed her very much and went to the grave to burn incense with love. "I bought a coffin, dug up my grave, tried to bring home my bones, and rebury my love." After the grave had been dug, Zhu went in and saw Anu's face as it did the living. His skin was not rotten, and his clothes were as rotten as the ashes, and his jade jewelry was as fresh as he had made it. And look at the waist. There's a few gold baggage. He rolled up his baggage and carried it into his arms, which took off his robe, covered his body, carried it into his coffin, and rented a car to take him home. Parked in another courtyard, changed her into a new embroidered dress, and slept next to her, hoping for a miracle. Suddenly, Anu came through the door, laughing and saying, "There's a thief digging his grave. I came to Dongshangfu the other day, and came back 3 days later and my house was gone," said Zhu, who greeted her with surprise. "I didn't come with you because I grew up so grateful that I couldn't leave her. Now that you've taken me and buried me, you're the greatest benefactor to me." Zhu asked her, "The ancients lived and died, now your body is the same as before. Why not follow the ancients and come back? It's all destiny," Anu said with a sigh. "It's probably not true that the legend of the world has come back from the dead. What's the difficulty in getting up and walking again? But it can't be the same as a living person, so there's no need for that." When the coffin was lifted, the body stood up on its own. It was lovely and slender, but cold and snow in her arms. So Anu wants to lie down in the coffin again. and Seo easily stops her. My wife was so passionate about me, she says. My owner brought back tens of thousands of gold from abroad, and I secretly took some, without my owner asking. Then I became critically ill and had no relatives, so I hid on my body and made a funeral. Madame mourned my death and buried me in gold jade jewelry. My body can't rot just because it's gold treasure. How can it last in the world? If you really want me to stay alive, don't force me to eat. Otherwise, my spirit will be gone. And so will my spirit. Zhu built a beautiful house and lived with her. She talks and laughs like a normal person, but she doesn't eat or sleep, and she doesn't see strangers. A year later, Zhu Sheng drank a little and was a little drunk. He raised a glass and poured the remaining few drops of wine on her. She immediately fell to the ground, bleeding from her mouth, and a body of kung fu rots in one day. Zhu regretted that it was too late and buried her in a grand funeral.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.